kissed another man in front of him to get a reaction, but this wasn't expected.
I kissed my boyfriend's best friend just to make him jealous. So let me start off by saying I know it sounds stupid, and I didn't plan for any of this to happen. I know that sounds like an excuse, but honestly, things just spiraled. And before I knew it, I was sitting here, trying to figure out where it all went wrong. I swear, at first it was all just one big joke, one of those things you do without thinking about the consequences. But I guess I should start from the beginning. Before everything went downhill, life was, I wouldn't say perfect, but it was good. I had a decent job and a guy who, well, wasn't exactly my type, but was good to me in a way no one else had been. We weren't married, never got that far. I met my husband when I was still in my early 20s. I had just left a relationship where both were too young and too reckless, and things between us were always a bit chaotic. We had these amazing highs, and then the lowest of lows. But reality hit hard, and we just weren't right for each other. A few weeks after my breakup, my friends dragged me out one night to some random event, and that's where I met my husband. At first, I didn't think much of him. I mean, he was cute and all, but I wasn't really looking for anything serious, nor had I forgotten about my ex. I had my hands full with work and my mental health, and the last thing I needed was to complicate my life with another relationship. But he was persistent. He kept showing up, kept asking me out, and eventually I caved. I didn't expect much from it, honestly. I thought maybe we'd have some fun, and that would be it. But before I knew it, we were spending more and more time together. He was different from anyone I'd ever been with. Stable, reliable, the kind of guy who actually showed up when he said he would. That's what drew me in, I think. After everything I'd been through, it was nice to be with someone who wasn't full of drama. We moved in together a couple of years later, and for a while things were really good. He wasn't perfect, but who is? He had his flaws, but I could deal with them. At least that's what I thought at the time. Anyway, this all brings me to the party where everything changed in our relationship, the pre-party, because that's where things really started to go wrong. It was supposed to be just a casual get-together, you know? A bunch of us hanging out before the main event, which was a concert from a local band none of us knew much about. Everyone was drinking, the music was loud, and the vibe was all over the place. I wasn't even planning on going at first, but a couple of my friends convinced me to come out. They thought I needed a break, and maybe they were right. My husband was there too, obviously. We weren't one of those couples that did everything together, but we had a group of friends together, so hanging out was always fun since everyone got along. That's where Ron comes in. Ron was one of those friends you don't think about twice, especially because he was my husband's best friend. We'd known each other for years, but nothing ever happened between us. Not even a hint of anything more than friendship. He was just Ron. One of the girls in the party had brought a drinking cards game. It wasn't the kind of game everyone sat down to play. She just approached the groups in the party and asked a question or proposed a challenge, depending on the card she had on her hands. That way, there wasn't really a choice of playing the game or not. When she got to us, I was talking to Ron and another couple of friends we had. I could see my husband close to the pool talking to some friends, but we weren't in the same conversation circle. She turned to me and said, "Kiss the person to your right or jump in the pool, choose fast." The person to my right turned out to be Ron, and I definitely wasn't going to jump in the pool. So when I kissed him, it was supposed to be funny. Like, one of those dumb things you do in the moment because everyone's watching and you want to get a reaction. I wasn't thinking about it, really. I didn't think it would be a problem. People were laughing, egging us on, and I thought it would be funny to keep the game going. Except my husband didn't laugh. He didn't even seem mad. He just looked hurt, confused maybe? I don't know. It was like he couldn't process what was happening. And before I could even explain, he walked out, left the party, left me standing there. And that's when I realized I might have taken things too far. The thing is, I didn't mean anything by it. It wasn't supposed to be serious. But at that moment, everything started to feel very real, very quickly. I could see how upset he was, and suddenly, what was meant to be a joke didn't seem so funny anymore. Now here I am trying to figure out how to fix this mess, because yeah, maybe I crossed a line. And maybe, deep down, I knew exactly what I was doing. But the truth is, I never thought it would get to this point. After he walked out of the pre-party, things got weird. I didn't chase after him at first, partly because I didn't think it was that serious. I figured he'd cool off and come back in, maybe even laugh about it later, but he didn't. I stayed at the party, trying to enjoy the rest of the night, but my mind kept drifting to him. Every time I checked my phone, there were no messages, no missed calls. By the time I finally decided to leave, I was feeling a little guilty, but mostly just confused. When I got home, the house was dark. He wasn't there. I tried calling him, but it went straight to voicemail. I texted him a simple, "Where are you?" but no response. Maybe he needed space, I thought. He'd probably gone to a friend's house to cool off, and by morning, things would go back to normal. The next morning, he still wasn't home. By this point, the guilt had really started to sink in. I mean, I kissed Ron in front of him like it was some kind of joke. It wasn't supposed to hurt him, but I guess I never stopped to think how he might feel seeing that. I tried to imagine what I'd think if the roles were reversed, and I realized, yeah, I'd be pissed, but I still didn't think it was enough to end things over. I spent the whole day trying to figure out what to do. My thoughts were similar to this. Should I call him again? Maybe I should just give him more time. He didn't block me or anything. I figure that's a good sign. He'd text me when he was ready to talk, right? Except he didn't. Days passed, and still nothing. Every time my phone buzzed, I hoped it was him, but it never was. By the end of the week, I was starting to get really worried. I didn't want to admit it, but a small part of me began to panic. What if he wasn't coming back? What if that stupid kiss had ruined everything? I finally caved and texted his other best friend, Steve, to see if he knew where my husband was. Steve's response was pretty short, just a, "He's okay, he just needs some space." No details, no explanation, just that. It didn't make me feel any better, though. In fact, it made me feel worse. Because if Steve was involved, that meant my husband was actually serious about this. After a few more days of radio silence, I couldn't take it anymore. I called Steve again and asked, begged him to get my husband to talk to me. I just wanted to know what was going on. Did he want to work this out? Was he done with me? I couldn't stand being in limbo, not knowing if my marriage was over or if I still had a chance to fix things. Steve finally agreed to talk to him, and after what felt like forever, I got a message. It was short, just a, "We need to talk." My stomach dropped when I read it. I had no idea what to expect, but I knew it wasn't going to be good. We met up at a cafe, and the moment I saw him, I could tell he was different. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept much since that night. But there was something else, too, something colder. He wasn't his usual self, the guy who would always find a way to crack a joke, even when things were tense. We sat down and I didn't even know where to start. I wanted to apologize, explain that it was just a stupid, meaningless joke, that I didn't want to hurt him. But before I could say anything, he cut me off. "I don't get it," he said, his voice flat. "Why would you do that, right in front of me?" I didn't know how to answer. At that moment, everything I had rehearsed in my head fell apart. I tried to explain that it wasn't serious, that it didn't mean anything, but the words felt weak as soon as they left my mouth. He wasn't buying it. "I know you say it was a joke," he continued, "but it didn't feel like one. You kissed him like I wasn't even there. Do you know how that made me feel?" I couldn't meet his eyes. I felt ashamed, like a kid who had been caught doing something they knew was wrong, but couldn't explain why they did it. I wanted to say something that would make it better, but I knew there wasn't anything I could say that would undo what I had done. "I just need to know," he said after a long pause. "Is there something going on with Ron? Has there ever been?" I shook my head. "No, of course not. It was just a stupid joke. I wasn't thinking. I would never cheat on you." He didn't say anything for a moment, just stared down at his coffee like he was trying to decide whether to believe me or not. I could see the doubt in his face, and it killed me. The trust we had built over the years was gone, just like that, all because of one careless moment. "I don't know if I can get past this," he said finally, his voice low. "It's not just the kiss. It's the fact that you didn't even think about how I'd feel. It's like I don't matter to you." And that hit me harder than anything else he could have said, because the truth is, he did matter. He mattered more than anything, but I had hurt him in a way that made him doubt that, and I wasn't sure if there was any way to fix it. We talked for a little while longer, but by the end of the conversation, it was clear that things weren't going back to normal anytime soon. He said he needed more time, more space to figure out what he wanted. I didn't know if that meant he was coming back or if this was the beginning of the end, and honestly, I was too scared to ask. Weeks passed after that conversation at the cafe. At first, I tried to give him the space he asked for, hoping he would come around and things would go back to the way they were. But the silence was unbearable. Every day without him in the house felt like a gaping hole, and I was filled with guilt. I tried keeping myself busy, throwing myself into work and spending time with friends, but it all felt like distractions. My mind was always on him, what he was doing, where he was, if he was thinking about me, about us. I replayed that night at the pre-party over and over again in my head, wishing I could take it all back, wishing I could undo the stupid kiss that had blown everything apart. A month after we talked at the cafe, he finally reached out again. Another text. Let's meet up. My heart sank when I saw it. I knew this was it. Either we were going to work things out, or he was going to tell me it was over. I tried not to overthink it, but by the time we met up, my nerves were shot. We sat down in the same cafe as before. The air between us felt heavy, like there was so much unsaid, so much hanging over us. He looked tired, more tired than last time, if that was even possible. And when he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, like he was forcing himself to get through it. I've been thinking a lot, he said, his eyes fixed on the table. About everything. About us. I nodded, my heart racing. I was too scared to say anything, afraid I'd say the wrong thing and push him further away. I'm not going to lie, he continued. What you did hurt, and I don't know if I can fully trust you again. Those words hit me like a punch in the gut. I had been hoping for some kind of hope, a sign that we could fix this, but hearing him say he didn't know if he could trust me again felt like the final nail in the coffin. But, he added, I've also been thinking about everything we've been through, all the good times, the hard times, and I don't want to just throw that away. For the first time since the conversation started, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe there was a chance, after all. I need time, he said, looking me in the eye now. I'm not saying we're back to normal because we're not, but I'm willing to try. I'm willing to see if we can rebuild this. Relief flooded over me, but it was mixed with anxiety. This wasn't a clear yes. It wasn't a guarantee that things would work out, but it was something. It was a chance, and I knew I had to hold on to that. I know I messed up, I said, my voice shaking. I know I hurt you, and I'm so sorry. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. He didn't say anything for a while, just stared at his coffee. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft. I'm going to stay with Steve for a while longer, he said. I'm not ready to come home yet. I need more time, but we'll keep talking, okay? I nodded, trying to hide the disappointment. I wanted him to come home. I wanted us to go back to how things were, but I knew that wasn't going to happen overnight. Over the next few weeks, we kept in touch. We texted, called each other, and even met up a few times. Each time it felt like we were making progress, but it was slow, painfully slow. He was still distant, still guarded, and I couldn't blame him. I had broken something between us, and it wasn't going to be fixed with just a few apologies. One night, a couple of months after that second cafe meeting, he came over to pick up a few clothes. After he made his bag, we sat down in the living room. It was awkward at first. Neither of us really knew what to say. But then he broke the silence. I miss this, he said quietly. I miss being here. I miss us. Tears welled up in my eyes, and I blinked them back. I miss you too. He looked down at his hands and then back up at me. I want to try. I'm still not sure if I can get past what happened, but I want to try. For us. It wasn't the grand reconciliation I had dreamed of, but it was more than I had hoped for. I could see the doubt in his eyes, but there was also something else, something like hope, and that was enough for me. And he asked me out on a date that same week and told me to meet me at the restaurant. I was very excited until walking through the restaurant's door and seeing my husband passionately kiss another woman. While seeing them, I immediately started crying and ran off the restaurant. When I got to my car, I got a text from my husband. "Feels good, doesn't it?" Was that what he was trying to do? He tricked me just to get revenge over a stupid kiss? I couldn't believe what was happening. In the end, I realized that trust, once broken, doesn't come back all at once. The moment I broke my husband's choice, things fell down the hill. It didn't matter how much he loved me. It would never be enough if he didn't trust me. Update. Hey everyone, I didn't expect to be writing an update, but a lot has happened since my last post. So, here we go. First of all, things between my husband and me have been complicated. After he moved out and we spent a few weeks away from each other, things were good for a while, but it wasn't exactly smooth sailing. We met up for coffee a few times to try to figure out a divorce deal without lawyers. It would be cheaper for both. I could tell he was still carrying the weight of what happened, and honestly, I was too. Every little argument seemed to circle back to the kiss, even if we didn't mention it directly. There was this unspoken tension that I could never quite shake, like I was always waiting for the other shoe to drop. We tried therapy, couples counseling, not because we wanted to get back together, but because my mother-in-law suggested it so that we didn't break up with unfinished businesses. I thought it might help us talk through everything, get over the incident, and move on with our lives. We worked through a lot of our issues, talked about communication, trust, all that stuff. We eventually decided to try to get back together while still going to couples counseling, but no matter how many sessions we had, I could tell something was still missing. My husband just couldn't seem to fully move on from what I did. He said he forgave me, but I don't think he ever really did. It became clear that even though we were both trying, we were just on different pages. I wanted to put the past behind us and focus on the future, but he was still stuck in the hurt. He started pulling away again, coming home late from work, spending more time with his friends, and less with me. I asked him about it, but he always brushed it off, saying he was just busy or tired, but I knew something was wrong. Then I found out why. I wasn't snooping, I swear. I don't even know how I ended up finding out. One night, his phone was sitting on the kitchen counter, and a message popped up from someone named Carol. I didn't think much of it at first. My husband works with a lot of people, and I know a few of his female coworkers. But something about the way the message was worded made me pause. It wasn't anything too obvious, but it was just off. Too casual, too familiar. I didn't say anything that night. Instead, I started paying more attention. Over the next couple of weeks, I noticed more messages from Carol, and they weren't just about work. They were texting late at night, long after the workday had ended. I tried to tell myself I was overreacting, that it was nothing. But deep down, I knew something was going on. One night, after he fell asleep, I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed his phone and read through the messages. It wasn't good. They weren't explicit, but there was definitely something there. A closeness, a flirtation that had no place in a marriage. My heart sank. It felt like everything we'd worked so hard to rebuild was crumbling all over again. I confronted him the next morning. I'll never forget the look on his face when I asked him about Carol. He looked shocked, caught off guard. But then he did the thing I was dreading most. He lied. He said she was just a friend from work, that there was nothing going on. I wanted to believe him, but I couldn't. Not after everything we'd been through. We argued for hours that day. He kept insisting that I was overreacting, that I was just being paranoid because of what had happened between Ron and me. But I wasn't buying it. I knew what I had seen, and I wasn't going to let him gaslight me into thinking I was imagining things. Eventually, he admitted it. He said that nothing physical had happened between them, but that they had been talking a lot, too much. He said he didn't mean for it to turn into anything, that he was just lonely, that he felt disconnected from me after everything that happened with Ron. He said he had fun with her and was tired of trying to fix things with me. I was devastated. After everything we'd been through, after all the work we'd put into rebuilding our relationship, he had gone and done this. I didn't know what to do. I felt like I had no right to be angry, considering what I had done. But at the same time, I couldn't shake the feeling that he had betrayed me. We decided to separate. He moved out again, and this time it feels more final. We're not officially divorced yet, but we're heading in that direction. I don't know if we'll ever get back together, and honestly, I'm not sure if I want to. The trust between us is completely shattered, and I don't know if it can ever be rebuilt. I've learned a lot about what I want and need in a relationship. I've realized that both of us made mistakes, and while I regret what happened with Ron, I also know that my husband's actions were his own choice. We both played a part in the breakdown of our marriage, but that doesn't make it any less painful. As for Ron, I haven't spoken to him since the night of the pre-party. After everything blew up with my husband, I realized that Ron was never really a part of my life in any meaningful way. He was just a symptom of the bigger problems in my marriage, not the cause. And honestly, I'm okay with that. I don't need any more drama in my life right now. So, that's where things stand. My husband and I are separated, and we're figuring out what comes next. I'm not sure what the future holds, but I'm trying to take things one day at a time. I've learned a lot from all of this, and while it's been incredibly painful, I'm hopeful that I'll come out the other side stronger. Thanks for reading, and thanks to everyone who offered advice and support after my original post. It's been a rough journey, but I'm getting through it, slowly but surely. How do I start writing this right now? I feel so ashamed of myself, and I don't even have the mind to share it. If anyone had told me that one day I would come on Reddit to share my story, I would call that person crazy. I can't believe I'm the one right now. I made a big mistake, and I don't know how to correct it. I have been tearing up for about a week now. I just wanted a perfect man that I could boast of, but I guess I just took it too far. Right now, I realize that I might have overreacted. My name is Amanda, Mandy for short. I am a 32-year-old interior designer. My husband's name is Jake. He is a 34-year-old baseball coach. My husband and I have been married for 4 years now. My husband and I met at an annual community fundraiser 5 years ago. Jake and I have known each other for 5 years, but we have been married for 4 years. We met at an annual community fundraising event. We started off as friends that day we met and took things slow. Well, for me actually, because Jake was never a patient type. Back then he was very much in love with me to the extent people gossiped about it. It was more like an obsession. Jake back then wanted to know and be involved in everything I was doing. He follows me literally everywhere. It got even worse when we got married. Honestly, I'm not saying it's a bad thing for your partner to be too involved in your business. No, guys, that was not what I meant. I personally don't like it. So guys, that fateful day we met was my first time seeing Jake. I have been part of that event for ages, or let's say ever since I was a teenager, and I can bet that I had never come across Jake. Jake also has been part of it since childhood. The most shocking part of it was that his family was one of the organizers of the event. That day we exchanged contacts and kept in touch with each other. At that time, we were both in our final year in college, but in different places, and a few months later we graduated. After graduation, Jake and I dated for 6 months and decided to tie the knot together on a new year. We planned it that way because we wanted all our family members to attend our wedding. The wedding was memorable and we had a lot of fun, but I wasn't too happy like a bride should. I faked all the smiles. That was the biggest mistake of my life. I should have been true to myself and to Jake also. Honestly speaking, guys, I really did not like Jake the way he liked me. Yes, guys, the love was one-sided from the beginning. I thought maybe one day I would learn to love him totally, but that never happened. I should have opened up to him about it and called off the wedding. Then, I thought about the emotional damage and didn't want to shatter Jake's heart on the altar. I thought of going on with the wedding to see if I could love and accept him. But the one time I started to give him a chance, it never lasted long. I was always finding fault in whatever he does. The most painful part of it all was that I kept pretending to myself and also to him. It even got worse when we both finally got married to each other. I know a lot of you all would say, maybe I was trying to heal from a heartbreak, but guess what, guys? That wasn't the issue. I have never been into any toxic relationship before I met Jake. My relationship with Jake wasn't toxic either. I don't know why, but I don't really find Jake fancy. He isn't like the other guys that I have dated in the past. Most of the guys I have dated were good looking and were all physically bodily built. My husband was never the type. My husband got fed up one day and he left. Yes, guys, he did. Right now, as I'm writing this, I don't even know where my husband is. We got into a big argument and he left. It's been 2 months since Jake left the house, and he hasn't returned. He left no clue about his whereabouts. I have reached out to a lot of relatives, family friends, and colleagues, but no one seems to know about his whereabouts. I guess my condescending attitudes pushed him away. Since Jake left, I have been finding it difficult to fend for myself. My husband left with his life savings. We both had a joint credit card and saved our money there for future expenses, but 90% of the money there was his. Guys, it's a huge amount of money, and my husband left it without leaving a penny for me. The house bills and monthly expenses are taking a toll on me. I couldn't take it any longer. That's why I have decided to come out and vent. This is too much for only me to bear alone. Most of my friends and family members that I have cried to for help all turned their backs on me, most especially my parents. They cut all financial support since the day I got married. I no longer have access to any monetary benefits from them. They kept reminding me of how my condescending attitude sent my husband away. I really regretted it, no doubt, but that's not all that I need right now. I really want to fix this and also apologize to my husband for making him feel less of himself. The most heartbreaking part of this is that my husband also took my personal credit card with him. The previous night, before Jake and I got into an argument before he left, a client of mine sent me some amount of money to do some interior decor for his new apartment. It's been 2 months and the client isn't taking it lightly with me. I have explained what happened and he's not ready to understand any of it. The agreed date he proposed that I either do the design or refund the money has elapsed. I don't even have money to feed, then talk more of having money to buy the materials I need for the design. Right now I'm fed up. I can't reach my husband. His lines are not reachable. He blocked me on all platforms and left no clue about where he went. What I am very sure of is that his family members know his whereabouts but wouldn't want to let me know. Jake has planned with his family to punish me. It's been 2 months already, and I have finally learnt my lessons. I just want him to come back so I can pay off this debt I'm in right now to clear my name. The client is on my neck and everything is so frustrating right now. I know a lot of you would want to ask how all of this started and what actually made my husband run away, right? Well, I'm going to tell you all about it. So guys, like I said earlier, I didn't love my husband Jake the way he loved me, mainly because of his physical appearance. He never had the physique I looked up to in a man, and he wasn't like the type of men that I had dated in the past. Jake doesn't know how to dress expensively mostly because he prefers to save and save. I have tried talking with him on this, but it never ends on a good note. We either end up fighting or give each other attitudes. The frustrating part of all this is that my husband was comfortable going out like that. Sometimes I don't really feel comfortable going out with him to any gatherings. Yes, the first day we met at the annual community fundraising, he dressed casually, and I didn't have any problem with it. I thought maybe it was just a one-time thing, but guys, it got worse. I have tried and tried to teach him how to dress well, but all to no avail. Most of our dates were usually done in the evenings and not in a populated place. That's to show how embarrassed I was then. Honestly, that was not the kind of man I dreamt of marrying. I don't even know what got into me that I accepted his proposal in the first place. I thought maybe along the line he was going to change, but he didn't. I couldn't control it and couldn't tolerate it either. I started pouring out my mind to him. Most of our disagreements were based on his physical appearance and the fact that he hated spending expensively on clothing. I don't like to look like everyone else. It's always best to look different and sophisticated. What hurts me more is the fact that as a result of him not caring to buy designer outfits, he never spends his money buying them for me. Not only that, guys, Jake wasn't financially up to my standards. As a graduate, I have told him by writing emails to different companies and organizations that maybe he would secure a better paying job so we could live okay and stop coaching. But my husband didn't listen to me. He earns reasonably more than me, but I just wanted more. I don't think it's a crime to want more, right? I couldn't take it any longer, guys, and so I cheated on him. I cheated on my husband with one of my exes, Fred. Fred was the last guy I dated before I met Jake, my husband. We broke up on a mutual agreement because he was about to go to the States, and we weren't ready for any long-distance relationship. That was how Fred and I relationship ended. So guys, Fred was in town one day, and he proposed for us to link up. It took me 4 days before I accepted his proposal. I was dealing a lot at that time. I was not even ready for anything like that. But I later gave it a second thought to see what would come out of it, and so I agreed to his proposal. We linked up at our usual restaurant, and it brought back a lot of memories. We chatted about a few things like the time we spent together and life after the breakup. It was then I told him about all that I was going through, and I somehow found solace in him. Fred was not a perfect guy, but he met some qualities I looked up to in a guy. He had amazing features, but we didn't end up together. So guys, one thing led to another that day, and we made up. Yes, guys, we did, and it was just one time, and we never met since that day. No one knew about this, not even my husband. I thought doing that would ease my stress, but it didn't. I know what I did was bad, and I'm not even proud of it either. It was a one-time thing, and again, one time wouldn't hurt to relieve me of the headaches my husband was giving me. Well, I'm not trying to validate what I did, but then I needed to do something, so I won't go crazy. What even got me more fed up was when a friend of ours, Catherine and Joel, were having a housewarming party, and they had invited us to attend, and Jake decided to embarrass me. They even gave out a dress code, which was an emerald green party. I went out of my way to shop for myself and my husband so we could look nice together as a couple. I told my husband about my plans, and he agreed to put on the outfit I was going to get for him from the store. The store owner was a close friend of mine, and she gave me a couple of men's outfits to give to my husband to make his choice and return the rest. The clothes came as planned, and my husband did the testing, and he made his choice. He was even happy with it, and we sent the rest back to the store. 2 nights before the party, my friend Catherine called me to help her out with some few things concerning the preparations, which I did, and couldn't go back home because there was a lot to do, and I had promised I was going to help her out. I called my husband about the new development and told him I wasn't going to come back home before the party. He agreed and sent my outfit. So guys, the day of the party came and everything was set and ready. The guests were arriving in their numbers before the official time. Jake, on the other hand, was nowhere to be found. I called but wasn't reachable. The party started and the official opening was done. I was really angry because I expected him to have been there earlier. I just wasn't having it. Jake did end up coming, but I was so furious by then that I wasn't ready to listen to him. I had already vented to my friends at the party, and they all had tea of what was going on. He finally pulled me to the side at some point to let me know the reason he ended up coming late. According to him, he got a last-minute work call from a side job he had been involved in. He tried to make me understand that he got paid a lot of money for the job, but that still didn't make a difference to me. I was just tired of his priorities being different from mine. I like to show up and show out, and I don't think that's a crime at all. Jake was really stressed that night, and I think he was able to find out that I had complained to my friends about his behavior. At first, he was willing to try calming me down, but at some point I noticed that he left me alone and didn't care to check if I had already calmed down or not. He was nonchalant, and I even spotted him making phone calls without caring to look for me. I couldn't believe my eyes had that point. He had wronged me, yet he was ready to forget all about it and act like nothing happened. I got so furious and left the party. Catherine tried stopping me, but I wasn't having it. I went home without Jake. After all, we didn't come together as a couple in the first place. My husband came back home a few minutes after I arrived. He was so furious to the extent I saw the line of his veins on his head popping out. I have never seen him in that state before. He yelled at me and didn't let me say anything, and ordered me to keep mute while he did the talking. Jake expressed how badly he felt any time I complained about his physique, financial status, and his mode of dressing. He told me how he had been putting up with my excesses just so our marriage would work out, but he was no longer going to do that, and he was fed up with my constant nagging. At that moment, I was shocked and my mouth was literally opened. For a moment, I couldn't figure out who was standing before me, if it was my husband Jake or someone else. That day, I saw a different side of Jake that I never met before. From what I saw that day, Jake acted like someone who had been going through a lot and couldn't endure any longer. He didn't fail to mention how condescending I was towards him, and how I brought him down in front of my friends and his family. He explained that he put up with me only because he wanted to, and not because he was a doormat. I stood there speechless and didn't know what to say. I was literally in a state of shock, guys, and I wondered if this was really happening or not. Just then, Jake hurriedly went into the bedroom. He spent a few minutes there before he finally came out. Jake was with a big luggage filled with some of his belongings, and he left. I couldn't stop him because at that time I was trying to figure out what was really happening. It was so surreal and felt like a dream to me. That day, after a few hours, I started trying to reach out to my husband to know about his whereabouts. I thought maybe he had gone to stay with one of his friends just so he could clear his head. But he didn't. The night was getting darker that day. I didn't see my husband. I waited for 2 days, and he didn't return or call to let me know about his whereabouts. I just kept wondering what must have happened to him, and hoped he was okay wherever he was. I couldn't muster the courage to tell my relatives and in-laws that my husband was missing, and it was all my fault. On the 3rd day of not getting any information about him, I went over to inform my in-laws about their missing son. Out of the people present that I was sharing this with, none seemed to be moved. Everyone went about their business. It was then I realized that Jake wasn't missing as I thought. He had planned it with his family to leave me stranded. I was happy I didn't make any missing report because I would have looked stupid. The person I was thinking about isn't missing and was probably somewhere living his life. I kept waiting for my husband, but he didn't return. I reached out to some of his friends, but none seemed to know his whereabouts. Each day I kept praying for Jake to return back home so we could fix things up and also pay the debts. Like I said earlier, guys, it's been 2 months since Jake left, and I haven't heard anything from him. Update. Hey Reddit, it's been a while here. I'm sorry for the delay and also sorry for not keeping in touch. It's been almost a month since I last updated you guys on this about the big mess I was in last month. So guys, after 3 months and 2 weeks of being away, guess who decided to show up? My husband Jake. His return wasn't for reconciliation, but for a divorce. I thought maybe he left to clear his head, but no, that wasn't the case. My husband somehow got to know about my infidelity with my ex, Fred, and didn't take it lightly. Honestly, guys, I still can't believe how he got to know about it, but that's the least of my problems right now. He decided to come out of his hiding place just to serve me divorce papers. Like, who does that? After keeping me in an uncomfortable state for how many weeks he decided to divorce me? This is crazy. I even got to know that the job almost missed the party for having hired him full-time. I heard it from someone else, and it pissed me off that just when he was finally becoming the man I wanted, he wanted to divorce me. I just feel like it's unfair that after all I had been through trying to manage our marriage and be with him, even though I wanted someone else, he was going to divorce me. I don't care what anyone says, I am just very disappointed. I am still very sad and regret my actions because my karma has hit harder than ever. I tried pleading for forgiveness, but he gave me a deaf ear. He told me that he can't live with a woman that would try to bring his ego down at every slight provocation and have him discussed outside. I pleaded that I was going to change and begged for a second chance. Even after everything, he signed the divorce papers and made sure I did before leaving the house without uttering any other word. After I was done signing, my husband went into the room and packed the rest of his belongings, and he left. I fell on my knees and wept bitterly. You might think I have no reason to complain because I was left with a house, but guess what? Our house is a rented apartment. He literally left me to pay the bills. I totally regretted my actions and I took back my words, but at that moment it was too late. My husband was no longer the man I used to know. He was looking so different and he changed completely. Anytime I think about what I had done to him, I feel so restless and keep praying he forgives me because my words were too demeaning. I realized that there were better methods I could have handled. I should have approached him about his dressing and not talked about it in a condescending way. I should also not look down on him financially and also accept him the way he was. I didn't do any of these. Rather, I nagged at him without considering how he felt. I broke the trust we shared by talking down on him with friends. I shouldn't have done that. I failed my husband by bringing so low and not respecting him as my husband in any way. I thought maybe that would make him change and start being the man I wanted him to be. But I guess I took it the wrong way and never accepted him as my husband from the beginning. My mistake was to go ahead with the marriage plans after realizing that he wasn't up to my standards and taste. I kept pushing him away. My husband showed me nothing but love, but I was too carried away by physical appearance and financial status and neglected the man that literally adored me. I hate that my friends are only telling me all this now that he has left and there's nothing to do. I'm severely upset that they are only pointing out my faults after I am left helpless with no reasonable way forward. I feel betrayed and led on because this is all just too much. Nothing has changed since he left. In less than a few days, I would become homeless because I can't keep up with the house bills. My family wouldn't even assist me in anything because I was constantly hurting my husband's ego by discussing him with friends and even cheated on him. A lot is happening right now, and it's driving me crazy. The worst part is that our divorce hearing will soon start in court, and I know the process will do nothing but remind me of my trauma. I still wasn't able to pay my client his money, and Jake didn't even bring that up before leaving, even though I told him about it. Honestly, I don't even know what to do right now. My job is currently in shambles. No job offer is coming, and I don't have any money to feed or to take care of myself. I have sold a few things to raise money to clear some debts, but it's not enough. Day by day, the debts keep increasing, and there's no money to sustain it. I literally brought it upon myself, and I have learnt the hardest lesson in my adult life.